He'd made bad choices. But now, when the real battle came, he wouldn't make those choices. He wouldn't make the same mistake twice. The book's pages began to flip backwards, towards the beginning. And he realized that his adventure was just beginning. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Or so a scholar in the mountains had told him. Surely the weapon that banished the lost gods could defeat the Emperor. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Emperor had brought the Sky Ripper pieces up out of ancient burial by his obscene rituals. Could this be where the Iblis stone was hidden? Someone better get it before he does, thought Renato. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? The island was windswept desert. No one went there except ostriches and ostrich hunters. The Iblis stone. It sounded ominous. It sounded powerful. If the Emperor was searching for it, it must be dangerous. And so, Bernardo went ostrich hunting. Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient codices held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away. Were all these things the Iblis stone? Long hidden in a buried temple, another ancient item that was only resurfacing now, drawn up from the deeps by the Emperor's horrific rituals? And this is why heroes are called dashing, Renato thought. See? Dashing? Get it? Renato distrusted doors that opened automatically, especially after being buried for millennia. Was this some sort of trap? Death to traitors! Caught the ravens. Ravens were already here, cawing in frustration. They were still searching for a way in. Good. Then he hadn't come too late. Cool. Wish I could do that.
they really needed to redecorate anyway. Firewalls only let you through if they think you're hot enough. He wasn't that good. Yet. The Ravens at least could not get past this point. Obviously, the temple builders knew how to deal with tomb raiders. Imagine getting a horse up in one of these things. He would be cursing a blue streak. It was a stone of the purest blackness. It reflected no light, like a void made solid. Nervous, he picked it up. I can make you mighty. Who said that? Give me blood. It was the stone, eager, thirsty. That seemed tempting and terribly wrong. Zenobia was the Emperor's greatest general and a potent witch. But they had been close once, and Renato wasn't sure he really wanted to be Emperor. Why not capture the core of Sky Ripper instead? It was the eye of a lost god torn out by the transcendent Emperor to power his greatest weapon. "Not the core," said the stone anxiously. Was he listening to a talking rock? Ah, but the rock had a point. If the stone could truly turn him into a powerful warrior, he could defeat the Emperor with the very weapon the wicked old toad had sought for himself. To be a hero, you had to sacrifice old friends sometimes, especially when they've become enemies.
As he placed the impossibly black crystal in his gauntlet, Renato had a sudden vision. Charred fields covered in dead ravens below a black sun.
Was it the time of the lost gods before the transcendent emperor? Was it the future? Feed souls, it whispered. Take the power. He could feel the stone's hunger for souls, its thirst for blood. All right, I get it.
This was going to be interesting.
For a moment, Renato wished that somebody had been watching.
This chest contained blank passports from 15 countries. And something useful.
The ravens on Zenobia's island were no match for Renato. They screamed as the stones sucked out their souls. And with each death, he felt stronger. Take the power, the stone told him.
Hey! Hey, a workbench! He could try out his new plane. He felt like Tarzan. Zenobia was leading the Imperial Ravens here. She loved to be in the vanguard, where the danger was, where she needed her wits. Renato pitied whoever she was fighting, especially if it was him. The right jewel could really give you an edge. The wrong, well, it still looked pretty, didn't it? Zenobia was waiting for Renato. She was alone, confident as always. Fire danced at the tips of her claws.
Are you here to surrender? She seemed as cocksure as he felt. But she didn't know he had the stone. And I've missed you too, love. He chuckled.
She spotted the stone and bolted without another word.
Finally, Renato caught up to her. He had never seen her scared before. At school, she'd been the determined, brave one. Now her eyes were wide, frightened. He didn't like seeing her this way.
Kill her, whispered the stone. You cannot win your rebellion without it.
Please. No, said Zenobia. Not that way. Oh, they had been so close once. Could he really feed her soul to his demonic gem? But if he spared her, he would not get the full power of the stone. Oh, how could he be the hero he wanted to be? Renato hesitated. Zenobia was his greatest enemy. She was the Emperor's daughter and his greatest general, and the single person Renato least wanted to remove from this world, especially that way. She was holding her arms out before her, hands fluttering, fending him off with hopeless urgency. Nope, she was weaving a spell. He couldn't move. This thing is evil, she said. She slipped the Iblis stone out of its slot in his gauntlet and slipped it into a bag. Maybe we can learn from it. She eyed him with a strange, wry, apologetic look. I missed you too. And before he could move again, she was gone. Learn from the Iblis stone? What did that mean? Would she take it to the palace or to the observatory on the Nexus? If she thought it was evil, she wouldn't want it in the palace. Maybe I can outrace her to the observatory, thought Renato. Cats can run faster, but foxes can run longer. Renato felt a little sick. Ever since Zenobia had taken the stone from him, he'd felt an ache that wouldn't go away. He missed it. He wanted it back. He needed it back. Why hadn't he killed her when he had the chance? She was the enemy. He hadn't even seen her in 14 years. Why had he hesitated? You were a sucker for an empowered woman. Renato kicked himself. Don't make that mistake again. What did you do if one of these platforms stalled? Didn't smell any better dead, Renato thought. Zenobia thought the stone was evil. Was it? He longed to have it back. He'd felt so good killing ravens with it, and yet he'd felt unclean ever since he'd touched it. She confused him. She'd made him want to be a better fox, and then she'd abandoned him, never telling him she was the Emperor's daughter. Never contacting him since. Well, who was she to tell him the stone was evil? And while he was trying to recover the stone Zenobia had taken from him, the Imperial fleet was tightening its grip. He might fail to save the rebellion, and it would all be her fault.
Renato felt a burst of outrage. Not only had she stolen his gem, she'd also stolen his scientists. Sure, they were neutral, but they had helped him discover what the Emperor was up to. They were supposed to be helping me, Renato thought. So unfair. Energy spheres. Easy to dodge, but boy do they sting if you didn't pay attention. Boy, some people were just liable to explode if you upset them. Smelled burnt fur. His. Renato wondered if he could learn to cook this way. Probably not. He was practically sure he'd find something useful in one of these things. The scientist's toes were pointing arcane instruments at the stone and looking at it through prisms and reflections. Mine, said Renato as he took back the stone. Well, we need it for science, croaked the toads. So he killed them. He felt better immediately. Smarter, too. I thought you'd never come for me, whispered the stone. Then, a far-speaker toad croaked, in something like Zenobia's voice.
Leonardo, leave the stone with the toads. It will swallow your soul. Will kill everyone you love.
But Renato had an army to lead, an empire to bring down.
I know you can fight this thing.
Zenobia continued in the far-speaker's croak.
You let me live. You know how evil it is. It will destroy you, Leonardo. It will destroy everything you love.
She was right. He would get rid of it. Right? Now. Or now. He didn't really want to. I know. I'll go to the mountains, Renato thought. I'll find the strength to do it in the peace and quiet there. As the Farfarer landed at the foot of the mountains, Renato was surprised to find Lapino there. What are you doing here? Oh, you wouldn't believe it. I was stowed away on an Imperial courier ship, dressed up as a combat nurse carrying a general's beak transplant. This is not a great time, said Renato, who was pretty sure he did not, in fact, believe Lapino's story. That's when you need your friends, said Lapino. I just need some peace and quiet, said Renato, and grimly set out on the path. Renato wondered if his future self had commissioned these poles. It was a bit windy up here. Bernardo told his friend how he had slaughtered the toads and how he had nearly slain Zenobia. A terrible burden, this Iblis stone, sympathized the rabbit. Yeah, but I need it for the rebellion. Do you now? You know, you were a pretty fine fighter before you were wielding a demonic decoration. Oddly, the sword wasn't whispering at him to kill Lupino. Up ahead in the mountains, there was a peaceful spot. If he could rid himself of his burden anywhere, it was there. Bernardo's paws were getting numb. Calaveras really didn't want company, did he? Once, he'd found a Superman issue #1 in mint condition in a jar. Bernardo thought it would make a difference, snatching the Iblis stone before the Emperor could get it. And it would destroy him. Zenobia and Lupino, they were both trying to save him. Peace. That was what he needed. So much for peace and quiet. There was Lupino. Again. You're stronger than some dumb rock, Lupino said. Let's just bury it, and no one will ever find it again. Bernardo could feel the spirit energy of all those dead ravens inside him, pecking away. The rabbit was right. Even if the rabbit was a traitor, he was still right. He tore the Iblis stone from his gauntlet and threw it into the hole Lupino had dug. Stone was silent, probably sulking. Now whoop those Imperials, said Lupino. Are you coming? Ah, no, I can't come with you. It's my old injury, you know. Recently, it's been acting up terrible. I'd be no use to you at all. So Reynardo boarded the Farfarer alone. Reynardo felt lonely on board the Farfarer. How could his old friend Lupino, miraculously escaped from the Empire, leave him to face the final battle alone? Well, he'd abandoned Lupino before, hadn't he? It was only fair. And of course he felt lonely. He'd given up the Iblis stone and all the souls he fed it. Of course he felt alone. But he had done the right thing. It had been hard to do, but there was no better feeling than that. Zenobia would be so proud of him. The battle, alas, was not going well. He no longer had the stone, and he'd never gotten the core. Lapina wasn't with him, and he was up against Zenobia, out there somewhere, maneuvering the Emperor's forces. The rebels had been outnumbered from the start, and he still had that aching longing for the stone. But that is what it means to be a hero. He would fight his way to Zenobia. He would show her what he was capable of. Just him, with no diabolic accoutrements. He would win, no matter the odds. The portal was heavily guarded. It must go someplace they really didn't want him to go. No skateboarding, the sign said. I think this is yours, said Renato, but he couldn't hear his enemy's answer. Yes, that was it. Pirouette, slash, parry, dodge. Renato had never done such good work in a fight. He wished the poets were along to sing of his exploits for his old age. Maybe he wouldn't have to kill Zenobia. Maybe he could defeat her and take her prisoner. Then he could turn the tide against the Emperor. If she wasn't crowned princess, once this was all over, she'd have more time for him, right? What were these poles exactly? Parking meters from the time of the lost gods? Is a very cool sword, thought Renato. No, seriously. He couldn't feel his paw anymore. miracle, Renato fought his way to the Emperor's ship. He was exhausted, bleeding, but he'd found the strength to reject the stone. Zenobia came out of the ship. "Renato!" she shouted, and then she fell down and died. Lapino was behind her, wielding a sword that seemed to suck all the light out of the sun. "You idiot! You threw the stone away!" cried Lapino. "You said it was evil." "It hates sanctimonious prigs like you," laughed Lapino. "We're having a grand old time." Renato turned and ran. But no matter where he ran, Lapino jumped in front of him until Renato was cornered. That boy could hop. "You wouldn't do this to an old friend, would you?" cried Renato. "You mean this?" said Lapino as he slid the sword into Renato's guts. "Damn it! Again?" Renato stared at the book. He was still alive. Again. And still only flying away from burning Ubar. Had he lived that adventure? Or only dreamt it? Had he really died? It felt so real, not like a dream at all. And he'd lost again. Oh, he hated that. But he had made different choices. And he'd lost in a different way. It was the book, wasn't it? Oracles showed you your destiny. But this was showing him different ways he could die miserably. Thanks a bunch, book, he thought. But these were destinies that he did not have to fulfill. And he hadn't learned anything new this time. He'd done the same thing twice, yet expected a different outcome.